The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and thanks for joining today's webinar looking at ways and methods that we can ease and secure cloud deployments. My name is Shona Bradshaw. I'm delighted to be joined today by Dave Harper, who's one of the cloud specialists at our core partner Zscaler. He'll be taking you through some best practices and some challenges that are commonly faced when moving to the cloud, whether it's Office 365 or Microsoft Azure, and how lessons they have learned from assisting businesses in those deployments in terms of key watch out areas and areas that people can use, solutions that people can use to ease that journey into the cloud. A little bit of an agenda for today's session. I'll do a bit of housekeeping first of all, and then I will introduce Bytes. I will keep that very brief, as many of you will know us already. I'll then introduce Dave and Zscaler briefly, and then Dave will be taking you through the crux of today's presentation. He'll be talking around 6 hurdles that commonly get in the way of smooth and secure cloud deployments, and give you some insights into a different and a new cloud-first approach to cloud implementation, and some best practices in moving to the cloud securely before an interactive Q&A at the end. So a little bit of housekeeping for today's session. Attendee lines will be on mute throughout today's presentation. However, we do encourage questions. Please do post those via the chat or the questions box as they occur to you throughout the presentation, and then I'll pose all those questions to Dave at the end. In terms of today, we will be keeping the conversation and the insights to strategy and solutions only. We won't be getting in-depth into commercials on any particular solutions. Of course, those conversations are more than welcome post-webinar via your Bytes account manager. We are recording today's session, so we will be making that available to you post-session to review at your leisure and share within your wider business. Lastly, a quick request from me. We do have a feedback survey at the end. It's a very short 6-question survey. It's just to understand how the session has been for you in terms of the quality of the content, and also just to make sure that these sessions continue to hit the mark technically going forward. So who are Bytes? Bytes are security partnerships of the security specialist retailer within the Bytes Allied Electronics Group. Our whole ethos is to marry up the agility and insight and the specialist personal approach that you would expect from the smallest, most niche partner with the stability, the resources and the scale that you'd expect for working with a large group, so that we have the expertise but also the resource to assist in large global projects. We're exceptionally proud internally of the technical expertise that we add and wrap around all of our solutions that we work with. We have an in-house consultancy and an in-house technical support team as well, and that means that we not only enjoy top-tier vendor partnerships in terms of the technical delivery we can provide, but also we can offer a great deal of commercial value to businesses around technology and security solutions. We work purely across security, so the whole spectrum of information security, whether that's from the traditional firewall through content security, cloud security, which is what we're talking to you today around, or whether it's looking at advanced threat prevention or identity. So we're able to assist across a spectrum of different business and security needs. Across all of those, what we aim to provide to businesses is that extra pair of hands or expertise that form an extension of your IT and your IT security teams, whether you're looking for training around different solutions, whether you're looking to develop your security strategy and roadmap, whether you're looking for actual project implementation. There's a variety of different ways in which we assist and we add value to customers. And that's more than enough about us. Why are we talking to businesses of Office 365 and Azure, and why are we speaking to people today around securing their move to the cloud and doing things differently? Well, we understand and we know that Azure and Office 365 are increasingly being deployed in organizations. However, they are not necessarily being deployed in ways that are adding as much value as businesses had hoped. And there are known pain points which we've seen and businesses have seen, which are limiting the success and the security of those deployments. At the same time, many businesses are seeking a cloud-first strategy. So when they move to the cloud, it makes sense that they also look at securing that deployment and implementing that deployment in a cloud-first way. User adoption is a massive critical success factor when moving to any cloud project. It really stands or falls on the ease of deployment and the ease of access that users have to these resources. So that's something that the traditional model of using a hub and spoke network environment to move to the cloud can hinder, and there are ways around that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Dave Harper. He's one of the consulting engineers at Zscaler. We've been working with Zscaler for several years. They really are pioneers in cloud-first security. They protect more than 15 million users worldwide, and they work with thousands of companies globally across web security, cloud deployments, etc. So they have a myriad of experience that they've chosen to share in this session to assist you in future planning of cloud deployments and secure cloud deployments. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Dave, and I'll pop back on at the end to ask Dave your questions. Many thanks. Over to Dave.
Hi, thanks, Shona. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So good morning, everybody. Let me share my screen here. So hopefully it should be able to pop on. Aha, the trouble with two screens. There we go. Let's get this guy out of the way.
Lovely. We can see your full screen now, Dave. I'm just going to mute myself.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. All right. So my name's Dave Harper. So I'm a sales engineer at Zscaler. And today I'd like to, kind of cover the things that Shona had brought up in her presentation. So what do we see? Well, this cloud transformation is happening. The word cloud has been around for quite a long time, but now it's a very mature market. So some of the things that we see are 98% of really IT decision makers say next-gen networks are required to adopt this. There's been a huge uptick in 365 adoption, and a large percentage of these workloads are now running in the cloud. And then, of course, the whole idea around shadow applications, things like Box Cloud, Dropbox, etc. How do we work? How do we use these services? And how do we adopt them moving forward is all part of this cloud transformation that we see. Specifically around Office 365 and what we at Zscaler see is, we have well over 700 customers using Office 365. We process about 6.4 petabytes of data per month, and that is only growing. And we've seen a 22 times increase in the amount of traffic in the last 3 years. So that's a huge jump. So that tells us that 365 and this cloud mobility is actually taking shape, and it's becoming quite a mature market. So what's the big deal around cloud transformation? What's changing? This huge mega shift that we see in digital business IT transformation. So what is application location? So typically in the old world, my apps would reside on-prem in a data center, a series of data centers, maybe in a comms room, some headquarters site. But the new world is we see these moving more towards the public cloud, SaaS, and maybe an on-prem data center. So things like Workday, Salesforce, Azure, AWS, Office 365, we see this huge shift. The second piece is really my network architecture. So, my previous life in doing this for a while, I've seen a huge change in the way networks are being redesigned and revamped. So the old world is really the hub and spoke, backhauling traffic to a data center, then maybe having an egress out to the internet for your traffic. And now it's all direct to cloud. So if you look at some of the recommendations from some of the cloud providers, they're all direct to internet, local breakouts, etc. But having your traffic directed strictly to the internet to access those applications and services is really the recommended way. And then what about a security approach? So traditionally it's castle and moat. So you secure your network secure the corporate network. But as you start to shift these workloads into the cloud, how do you securely connect users and devices, regardless of the network? Is that more boxes? Is that some sort of SSL VPN? How do we do this? How do we maintain that same level of security? So my premise is really very simple, that cloud and mobility break network security. So as we see users accessing these services and working in different locations. We have home workers now. We have people working in coffee shops in between meetings. We have people working on trains, on airplanes, everywhere. So the location of the user is changing. They're not always necessarily sitting behind a desk at an office. And the applications that were normally sitting within these data centers are now shifting, and that workload is going up to the cloud. So GE, they do more than just light bulbs, says that 70% of its workload is going to be shifted to cloud services by 2020. So that's really in the next year, and that's quite a hefty amount of work for them to do. Microsoft Office 365 was built to be accessed via a direct internet connection. So how do you, begin to secure this? Because our premise is that network security is kind of becoming irrelevant. The internet is your new corporate network. Well, if it's your new corporate network, then how do you secure it? So the challenge is with data traversing back to a central data center to go back out is really internet gateways in a data center. So a simple web request can really take, 28 hops. And that's quite big. But what if you have this complex security stack? You have your IDP, you have your firewalls, you might have DLP, you might have a little bit of sandboxing, you might have some firewalls sitting in there somewhere, some web filters. Well, you can kind of see that the traffic really has to go through a lot of hoops just to get out to where it's going. Now, how do you multiply this across to multiple locations? And even though this massive investment, security breaches are really on the rise. Now, as apps move to a modern platform, the access we see today is really using 30-year-old technology. We explain this castle and moat. So you build your castle, I don't know if everyone can see my mouse, around this is my secure stack. This is where everything has to go. And you build a moat around it. You bring users in to access that and then go out to the internet. Well, how do you access these internal apps on Azure or AWS? Is it site-to-site VPN? What about remote users? It's usually a VPN coming into your network, going through that stack, then going back out again. And you can see this really adds a lot of latency, has potential to add a lot of delay, and not to mention the administrative headache of all these different security services or solutions sitting in your data center, your office. And we think that legacy technology can't be repurposed. Sure, you can virtualize something and throw it up in a cloud and say it's a cloud. But if you build a cloud with single tenant appliances, that becomes difficult to control. You have multiple appliances, multiple hops. It's complex to scale and to manage different user interfaces, different policies, and trying to spread that across either regionally or even globally does become a bit difficult. Now you can see where the bottleneck is as the traffic makes it through this piece. And the whole idea around this stack is to bring a bit of control, some enforcement, and some logging around. But we say in the new world, a really clever adage is, if you're going to build a power plant, would you build it with home generators? No, probably not. I don't think so. But despite the shift in this cloud transformation, this adaptability, despite the users working in different locations, are we still vulnerable? So yeah, trusted sites are more dangerous than expected. Why? Because they take a lot of third-party content to feed in. If you take this NBC page, there are over 125 different objects that are requested. And any one of these different objects from a third-party site could have something malicious inside. So is it judging their website's reputation alone enough to say, you know what, this is fine, I'm not going to inspect it? Really, you have the potential of 125 different kinds of threats or threat points from this one single site. In SSL traffic, we see that malware is seen in about 54% of the traffic that we see, which is about 54% is hidden behind SSL traffic. So why do we see this whole appliance piece kind of failing to keep up? So one of the pitfalls is, hey, I've got all these boxes, I've got all this stuff, that's great, but yet my usage of internet-based services is increasing. Well, 99% of malware is seen in only the first 58 seconds. So signature and software updates are required constantly to make sure that you're up to date on protection. So how do you handle the change control for these different appliances, different updates, different vendors to come in and make sure that you're most current? And how can they handle that quick 58-second window? How about inspecting encrypted traffic? So as we said, 54% of the advanced threats that we see are sitting behind SSL. How can you scale SSL inspection across the services that you consume if you're using an appliance-based piece, or you have different solutions for different pieces? You know, and also what about performance of that appliance? Can they handle the sheer volume? Typically what we see is it'll settle on, I'm going to whitelist a lot of this, and I'm only going to inspect the things that I think I should be inspecting. And of course, scaling inspection demands more beefier appliances. So I used to have a hardware background, selling hardware appliances, come in, hey, you know what, after a couple of years, hey, we have to refresh. So you have to add in, after 4 or 5 years into your budget, you know, we've got to replace these appliances, or some super new features coming out, and these are no longer end of life, or they're end of life, end of availability. So how can you scale that to match your needs? You know, do you have the budget to keep rebuying these appliances every 4 or 5 years? Some organizations like to sweat their appliances out, that's fine, but still, at some point, you're going to have to ask for more budget for those appliances. And as I'm going along, if you guys do have questions, please bring them up in the chat. There's no need to wait to the end. I'm happy to stop and take questions if there are any. But the second, you know, one of the other hurdles that we see is that these cloud apps really demand direct to internet connections. So we can see Gartner, we all love Gartner, it says access to cloud-based apps makes use of direct access to the internet from the branch office to reduce latency. So one, how do you improve that performance for the user, for the services, and how do you ensure that that's all secure? So even Gartner recognizes this huge shift. So if the internet is really your new network, how do you provide security and visibility and control that you need into the cloud? So the simple approach is really securing direct to internet connections. So it's very difficult to replicate a data center level security posture across all your sites, all your remote sites, if you have them, whether it's 2 or 3 or 12 or 20, or some of our customers have over 185 different countries. There's a huge cost to that and complexity of managing that. What about appliance sprawl? Then the performance impact of the hops that a packet has to take to go through each one of those different steps. And then at the end of the day, with this appliance sprawl, there is a compromise in whether or not your branch is secure. But you know, I'm here to tell you that you can enable, you know, internet breakouts with cloud delivered security. So what does that really do for us? Well, one is it reduces the cost. So by adopting a cloud service, you reduce the need of dependency on your appliances or even branch security applications, or excuse me, appliances. You're able to deliver a fast and secure connection and user experience. You can simplify your branch IT operations, and it provides identical protection wherever users connect, whether I'm in a coffee shop, or whether I'm at home, or whether I rock into an office. Or if I'm a global enterprise, if I move from, say, London this week, next week I'm working in Singapore, or I'm over in New York, or maybe San Francisco, my policy is able to follow me, right, which I think is great. And it's typically a challenge today with most vendors. So I think what we're saying is that cloud and mobility break this network security piece, because how can you secure this? The old network model relies on hub and spoke, MPLS, VPN, securing that corporate network. But with cloud services, the new network model is really direct to internet. Whether it's broadband, Wi-Fi, 3G, 5G should be coming out. And we're able to now securely connect users to applications. So how do we do that? So with Zscaler, internet access, we provide fast, secure access to internet and to your SaaS applications. We provide real-time policy and analytics that follow the user around. Changes are immediately enforced worldwide. Business analytics gives you the global visibility into the services that are used. You can look at applications or threats that are blocked. You can identify botnet callbacks, infected machines for quarantine. And your security stack as a service, rather than relying on this appliance sprawl, you have your security stack in the cloud, which provides access control around cloud firewall, URL filtering, bandwidth control, DNS filtering, everything that you would expect in a service platform or security platform. And if you're looking at something around SD-WAN, well, this is a great enabler for SD-WAN. So you're able to provide these direct connections on the fly, create an overlay, dynamically create these links with a single interface, have that traffic secured in the cloud and ready to go. We have a number of SD-WAN partners that we work with. So what is our security stack really? So it's very simple. We're powered by patented technologies. So we were purposely built as a multi-tenant architecture, and we architected this to work in the cloud. So we didn't evolve from appliances and then migrate. We do this in scale while paying attention to user privacy. We never store any content, and we only write log files to disk in a location of your choice. So you choose where that data is stored. We built a proxy-based next-gen firewall that handles all ports and all protocols. So we're not just a web proxy. We are, it's only just one aspect of what we do. So when we look at access control around cloud firewall, URL filtering, bandwidth control. So bandwidth control is a great feature. So normally this would be done by your provider, or you might do it on your own, on your edge devices, your edge routers, and say, you know what, I want to start traffic shaping my business critical applications. Well, we do that for you as well, but we do it from the egress of the internet. So if you want to go to YouTube and download or watch a cat video, who doesn't like cat videos? YouTube's going to try to stream the best quality, 1080 DPI video. Well, we can cut that stream down to where it doesn't impact your Office 365 or your other business critical applications, which I think is incredible. In terms of threat prevention, we do provide advanced protection, a cloud sandbox, antivirus, DNS security, as well as data protection. So data loss prevention, we do have a CASB, and also file type controls. So how is this all done? So these patented technologies allow us to do single scan multi-action. So as your traffic goes through our service, we inspect every bit that comes in. And all of our scanning engines fire at the same bit at the same time. So it doesn't have to go through one appliance for one feature, another appliance for CASB, another one for sandbox. Sandbox is usually you have a tap and you only send a certain amount. We do everything in line as that traffic comes across. So if we take the example of 365, so 365, we talked about its adoption. It's huge. A lot of people are doing this. So what does Microsoft say about this? Well, Microsoft will tell you direct to internet is really our preferred way and our best practice for Office 365. So there are really four ways. How do you differentiate your 365 traffic from your other traffic? You need to egress the 365 close to the user with matching DNS resolution. Avoid network hairpins. So in other words, a user coming in to a data center, then going back out to the internet to some 365 data center in Dublin. Can you imagine if you're sitting in Mumbai, you fire up your VPN client, you VPN all the way back to London, and then you go out to 365 in Dublin. That's crazy. So you want to avoid that network hairpin. And how do you assess bypassing your proxies and other types of inspection devices? So let's look about this. So the hub and spoke is really the wrong approach according to Microsoft. They recommend against using it. So Skype and SharePoint are really designed for low latency. I don't know if any of you have experienced trying to access SharePoint if you're sitting with hundreds of milliseconds of latency. It's pretty painful. The hub and spoke VPN requirements add unnecessary latency, which again hinders the end user performance. And user experience is really compromised. And backhauling all this traffic to a central location is costly. So if you're looking at ExpressRoute, well, it's not really recommended. So they have a review policy to ensure that everyone's aware of the 2 to 6 months of planning, extra complexity, etc. According to Microsoft, there's a review and approval process. It is kind of complex to configure correctly. And then over time, your Office 365 growth will grow organically and outpace the gateway, get over a cold, gateway upgrades and budgets. So going direct to internet is really the best way. You egress to the user, closest to the user. It's for a faster user experience across all ports and protocols. It's easy to deploy. There's absolutely zero hardware required. We have a one-click configuration that automates your Office, your 365 IP address and URL changes and exempts them from SSL inspection. And we do optimize that connectivity. So we do keep a number of long-lived sessions open, and we can optimize that traffic going back and forth for 365. For your open internet traffic, if you're sending everything to us, we have a full security stack for your direct internet connection, which provides access control, threat prevention, your data protection. So Microsoft will advise, bypass our traffic from all your scanning. We'll do that for you. Okay, well, that's great. I've got all this other internet traffic. That's fine, we'll do that for you. When we talk about having local access to 365, it's really about minimizing that latency with local DNS. So if you look here, a user is going to come in, he's going to go find his cloud instance of 365. He's going to take this hop that is about 52 milliseconds just to get the DNS server to get him to 365. Our world, we say, you know what? Why don't we connect that user to its closest, to the closest DNS server so we can get that user to 365 faster. So in this case, we're reducing that hop count or that latency to about 12 milliseconds, which at the end of the day gives you a better user experience. And why is this a good thing? Well, Zscaler peers with Office 365 in over 26 data centers. We have over 100 data centers across the world. So wherever that user is located, they'll access that data center that's close to them, and then they'll be directed to Office 365 and go across the 365 backbone. In terms of our scalability, we see about 45 billion requests that are processed a day. That's over 1 trillion requests a month, which is incredible. We do over 100 million unique threats that are blocked each day across our cloud. And we provide about 120,000 unique security updates per day. So there's 60 threat feeds that we partner with, different organizations. We also have our own threat feed. If we see something, we call it the cloud effect. If we see a threat that we haven't seen it before, we'll say, right, there's a threat, let's block it, and we'll propagate that across our entire cloud for all our customers for a cloud effect. But you can see in terms of a cloud solution, we truly are a cloud solution, because with our global presence, it doesn't matter where a user is in the world, they'll have that local protection available for them. So we are ISO 27001 certified, part of the EU-US Privacy Shield, which is great. Again, the big point is we peer directly with Microsoft in 26 data centers, which I think is great. And of course, with Azure and AWS, we peer as well, which is great. So what's this one-click configuration? So 365 updates either monthly or every couple months a list of new IP addresses or URLs that you typically have to go into your firewall to open up, you know, these new ranges, or you have to adjust your PBR for this new stuff. So there's a lot of internal change to manage these updates. So with change control, that process, depending on your organization's policies, it can take a bit of time, and it's a lot of work to do and to maintain. So with Zscaler, we have a one-click configuration. So this does a couple things. One, when you hit that button, we maintain those updates for you and automatically whitelist those new URLs and IP addresses for 365. So you don't have to spend the time of going through that process of upgrading your firewalls or your switches or your routing tables to allow that traffic through for any of their changes. We fingerprint all the 365 applications as well as other well-known applications. So you don't have to keep up with that URL or IP address change. And then we, as I said, we configure that whitelist. So we exempt that traffic from inspection automatically so you don't have to build that policy in or update that existing policy. So when you start looking at internet access, it's really very simple. It's fast, secure access to your internet, whether it's a SaaS application, whether it's hosted somewhere, whether it's, you know, just your typical internet traffic. Going through our service allows you to manage that. We do SSL interception at scale, so we have a purpose-built proxy infrastructure that can handle that on scale for you. So the protection with policy now is basically a user will connect to the closest data center and the policy follows them. You know, some of the larger organizations that have other vendors for this, it's kind of difficult to get a policy to follow a user around the world. And with visibility with our Nanolog cluster allows you to see some interactive dashboards. We have some great reporting to get you to the information that you need. If you want to understand how many botnet callbacks we've seen, great. We've seen this in 24 hours, 7 hours, whatever time period. Here's a list of those users. Let's go get a plan to quarantine those guys and, you know, fix them. And all these logs that we can store, we can also stream to an on-prem SIEM. So whether you're using Splunk, QRadar, ArcSight, whatever, we can stream to those solutions as well, which is pretty cool. So this is really your security stack as a service, providing that access control, providing threat prevention, and also data protection around that traffic. So when you're talking about a user who's not sitting on your network, how do you access that? Well, you know, typically it's a VPN client. So there are a lot of different VPN vendors on there. So our premise is really zero trust. How do you have a zero trust environment? First, you have to bring the user onto your network, and then you have to provide access to that application wherever it sits. Our premise is very simple. You don't have to bring that user on your network to access those applications. So we call this Zscaler private access, where essentially, no matter where that user sits, he can access applications, whether they're in the data center or up in the cloud, without ever having to come on the network, and still having that same security protection across that security stack that we provide. So it's not just a VPN replacement, although it can be. That's a great use case. What about mergers and acquisitions? How long does it take to bridge another organization's network into yours? Usually that's a 6-month process, maybe even longer. We can do that quickly and take it down from 6 months to 1 month to provide access to those services that are needed for both sides. VPN replacement, fantastic. What if you have a contractor or auditors coming on site? Well, you have to put them on the network. Well, you don't really need to do that. You just need to provide access to that application, and they're never on your network to begin with. So the applications themselves are essentially invisible. You don't have to publish them. You don't have to publish them on the internet. You don't have to publish them internally. And there are no inbound user connections at all to your corporate network, which is really great. So it's a native application segmentation rather than a complete network segmentation. So the use cases around accessing apps in Azure or AWS, so you don't need site-to-site VPNs. It could be a VPN replacement, so eliminating the cost and complexity of those inbound gateways. Secure partner access. If you have partners that need to access certain services, why bring them onto your network when they can just access those applications directly? And what about accelerating that M&A integration? So you don't have to immediately converge that IT infrastructure to allow everyone to start talking. So at the end of the day, private access really reduces cost, complexity, and actually better security and user experience. So we do enable secure IT transformation to the cloud. So one is through application access transformation. So we talked about applications moving from your data center to the cloud. How do we secure it? How do we access it? What about network transformation? So moving away from this hub and spoke or costly MPLS backbones to having direct to cloud. It doesn't matter if you have 2 sites or 20 sites or 150 or 500 sites. Having that direct to cloud or direct to internet capability provides better performance. Then again, that security transformation. So having less reliance on an internet and VPN gateway with stacks of different, products and services from different vendors to having a single cloud-based service that can handle all your security needs for secure transformation. So it's better user experience, it's reduced business risk, gives you better agility. So as you fire up new sites, new services, migrate applications, you don't have to worry about, well, gee, do I need to upgrade this piece of box, this 10? Do I need to upgrade my firewalls? Do I need to do something a little bit differently? No, we handle all that on scale for you. So lower TCO, and it gives you a competitive advantage by being more agile with adopting these services and moving forward. So when we start looking at, SD-WAN, SD-WAN is becoming a huge player in the market. There are a number of SD-WAN solutions out there. And at the end of the day, SD-WAN makes you more agile. You have a single point of control for configuring these different connections, rather than having someone go on site, plug in a console cable, and do a copy and paste, and hopefully you didn't fat finger, some characters in a routing table or what have you. So again, just want to reinforce being able to deliver that fast and secure user experience, reducing those costs, simplify your IT operations, and also protect your users wherever they go. There's no reason why, if I'm sitting at home, I shouldn't have the same corporate type protection as I would if I'm sitting in my office. You should have the same protection, especially in the era of BYODs, where I take my laptop home for work, I might let my daughter play on it. Having that protection, I think, is very critical. So that's the end of my presentation. I want to thank you for your time, and at this point, I'd like to open it up. If there are any questions that anyone might have, I'm happy to take them now.
So just to reiterate, if you've got any questions for Dave regarding any of the insights that he has shared, could you please take a few seconds to just post them via the questions box, and I will pose them live to Dave, and that'll be absolutely fantastic. In the meantime, while you're hopefully merrily typing away, All that it remains for me to do is to thank Dave very much for his time and his detailed insights into getting the Office 365 and the Azure deployments right. Thank you all as well for your time in coming along and in attending today's session. We do appreciate that you have very busy diaries, so we do appreciate when you take time out of your busy days to do so. And I'd just like to again thank the Zscaler team for putting together such a concise and detailed look in terms of different areas that can be challenging with moving to the cloud and how people can look to address those. So I don't have any further questions at the moment. So I'm just going to wrap up for now. Please do feel free if anything occurs to you after today's session to either drop a note to your Bytes account manager or do drop me a note and I'll pose them to the panel. Thanks very much, everyone, and good morning.
Thanks, everyone, for your time. Much appreciated.